Mano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
The goal today is verses 25 and 26, and that's going to end chapter 5. So it's 25 and 26 is interesting because it contains stages that every spiritual aspirant goes through. So this means that there is something for everyone to pay attention to, because we're going to go through 6 stages. That's why I have 6 there. That one goes from decently disciplined all the way to knowledge. I say decently disciplined because it's easy to say disciplined, but what kind of discipline, right? That's what we're talking about. We need to have a certain kind of discipline, and that's what we're going to speak about. The other part is verse 26 is going to have practical instructions. Okay, so verse 26 is going to support verse 25. So today is going to be about the 6 stages that everyone goes through, no exception. And verse 26, the 4 principles which one is required or would be helpful to follow in accordance with the Shastra for your own benefit. If not, then the knowledge would be partial. Okay? So this day is about something for everyone. Okay. So the first stage is, okay, we'll first say it. Labhante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayaha Kshina Kalmashaha Chinadvaidha Yatatmanaha Sarva Bhuta Hiterataha. Alright, the first stage is, you don't have to put the Sanskrit word down, is Sarva Bhuta Hiterataha. This is stage of discipline. Okay, now we're going to talk about what is stage of discipline and what it involves. Stage of discipline is living, in one short line, living a life of morals and values. Okay. Or being interested in the welfare of all beings. Now you can see why I said a certain discipline, because it's easy to be disciplined in one's own needs, but it's something different to be disciplined to accommodate everyone. Okay? So now let's talk about this stage. This stage is, or involves, that we all go through, gradually expanding one's mind to accommodate others, other people, other animals, other members, and feeling their pain. Yeah. This is a mature mind. An immature mind is unable to feel other people's pain. A mature mind is able to feel, that is, to be sensitive to what others are going through. So that means the fundamental emotion that underlies all other emotions that form what we could equate to a mature human being is empathy. So we're talking about empathy. No empathy, no accommodation of others around us, because the empathy hasn't been developed. Okay, so we know this from our own experience. Let's say like a child who is still an infant, and he is still learning the ways of, for example, sharing with his sister. Okay, so you give candy to a child, to a 3-year-old child, and the sister wants a half of the ice cream, and the child doesn't want to give any. Why? Because the child hasn't developed the capacity for empathy to feel the needs of his sister. So the same feeling can carry over, the same inadequacy, undevelopment, can carry over into adulthood, whereby everything for me and none for you. And this is a mark of an immature mind. This is why stage 1 is the stage of discipline involving expending your mind to accommodate the needs and the pains of other people. Okay? That means I share their joy and I share others' pain. In fact, this is, if you're married, a wonderful reason to be married, because being married allows the individuals on both sides to exercise this quality of empathy and to accommodate or to feel into or to be sensitive towards their partner. Or even children. One reason to have children, just one, not the only reason, is because if a person doesn't know empathy, then by having children, they are literally forced to develop empathy. Think about this. So for that reason, children also play an important part in one's development. Of course, if one misses the boat and they just have empathy, but that's the end of it, there's nothing afterwards, then you've literally stopped your journey halfway. So it's not just about having children or just about being married. Okay, but it's one very good use for exercising upon. So the question is, why are we able to hurt other people? Physically or mentally? Or emotionally?
From tamas?
Yep, it's the driving factor. Also in reference to what I just said, why are we able to hurt others? What makes it possible to hurt another person?
You're talking about hurt in every form? Physical and emotional?
Huh?
Physical, emotional hurt?
Yeah.
Psychological, all kind of hurts.
All kind of hurt, any kind of hurt. I said being insensitive. Okay? So what makes it easy or what makes it justified to hurt another person? See, this is a simple inquiry.
So that you can learn that it's wrong?
Huh?
So that you can learn that it's wrong?
Yeah, but what makes it possible? Why do we hurt other
Because
people?
you feel hurt by that person.
Because you can.
No, because
React.
we tend to operate through our own ego and feel my own importance and negate others.
Okay, very close. Okay. If you identify with your gross body, I am the body, then what's the chance of putting importance into their feelings, into their emotions, if one's over-identified with their gross body? Because see, the gross body, this is the body here, and your body is there, and that's the end of it. So there's nothing in between. So the more I identify with the fact that I am the body, the less capable I am to be sensitive to other people's feelings. And what, as Dave said, what is body? Matter, tamas. So therefore, the more one thinks I am this body, automatically the byproduct of that is it's easier to treat others less than a human being. Why else? That's one reason. There's many reasons. That's why else.
Well, because the same identification is going to give you that feeling of separation, of separate entities.
Yeah. There's also, we have personalities, right? There are physical personalities, and you can see these very easy. For example, they just are about sense gratification, gym, looking good, about, just feeling, all the food is just to have the abs, just to have the looks. It's all about the physical. So that's a physically identified person, predominantly. Then you also have emotionally identified people. They identify with accommodation of others' feelings. That means for them, family is important. That means being in and having the good friends, having a good relationship with other people. So this is one level, you could say, above than being identified with the physical. Okay? So if I've identified with the physical, then I am not identified as much with the emotional. So we're talking about a disbalance between physical and emotional. Over-identification with one equals under-identification with the other. We can make a statement and say even that an insensitive person who is yet to work on their capacity for sensitivity is a wife or a husband who's unable to feel the wife's pain. Despite them being together, this is common, right? Wife and husband together, and the wife is going or undergoing a certain mood, right? And the husband's right there, knows her for 20 plus years or however many years, and still the capacity to feel into her, as they say, heart, is not as developed as it could be. So this is the kind of stage, what we're talking about, self-discipline, which expands one's mind. This never ends, this expansion. And we'll talk about how, but we're just going to lay it out. So if this stage is not developed, then we call that an unbalanced person. So they will likely then not be interested in stage 2. Okay, so okay, so the basis of stage 1 is ahimsa. Now it starts to make sense what ahimsa means. In other words, a person who has well-developed stage 1 is the one who is an embodiment of ahimsa, non-injury. And what does non-injury mean? Empathy. My mind is expanded enough that I'm able to accommodate the needs and the emotions, the feelings of others because I'm unable to bear seeing them in pain. Why? Because my mind is so adjusted, so fine-tuned that it's able to feel the joys and the sorrows of others. So this is a mark of a mature person. And if one thinks they can get away with just self-knowledge, without addressing the primary human emotion of accommodating one's mind to expand and to see into other people's pains, then there is some work to do. Okay?
Is this like a spontaneous empathy or an empathy from the person?
This is a good question. At the start, it turns out to be a conscious empathy. Like, let me stop and see how do they feel, right? You're taking an initiative to actually stop and then just to let me see into them. After doing this, like with anything, with practice, it becomes spontaneous, okay? So the question is how to arrive to stage 1 by spontaneous practice of accommodating colleagues, families, people at the train station, people on the airport, everyone's needs. That means the more judgment I have towards others, the less I am practicing stage 1. We're just on stage 1, not even stage 2, okay? The summary of stage 1 is ethics/dharma. Now we also know what dharma means. Dharma means spontaneous accommodation of other people. Therefore, I am naturally unable to hurt anyone. Because if somebody is hurt, I am hurt. Okay? So the attitude here is not necessarily, at the beginning it is, but at a certain time it's no longer. The attitude is not, I should perform ahimsa, because then I'm going to gain punya karma later on. That's not the attitude. Even though in the beginning it is, if this is not well developed. After some time, this attitude of non-hurting, that is ahimsa, becomes spontaneous. Why? Because one has practiced it for so long, and if one hurts another person, they are hurt. If I hurt you, I am hurt. You see? Okay, we also spoke about at the beginning of the year 3 types of karmas. We said tamas karma, rajas karma, and sattvika karma. So, by the performance and development of stage 1, that is self-discipline to accommodate others' feelings, emotions, to be sensitive to their feelings, this naturally changes one's action into or from tamas karma to rajas karma to sattvika karma. Okay? So sattvika karma is not about just some random fact. It's a living reality as a result of living dharma, living ethics, and living ahimsa. All right? So, now that one has consistently practiced, and this is non-ending, so don't think, by the way, don't think that one should now suddenly arrive to some incredible level of level 1, and then they say, okay, now I'm ready for level 2. We're all practicing these levels all the time, right? So this is not about, oh no, I'm stuck here and I'm not worthy of other levels. All right? So this is just a practice. So level 1 comes to kshina kalmashaha. Okay? Stage of purification. Just put stage of purification. What is stage of purification? Ridding of one's mental weaknesses, mental leakages, mental blockages, mental hang-ups, balancing one's physical, emotional, and intellectual needs. Call a balanced individual. What does this mean to say balanced? From the beginning, I said if a person is over-identified with their physical body, then they will put most importance on their body, right? It's going to be important. How they dress, how they look, and therefore the world will also be important. If one's over-identified with emotions, then it's going to be about, oh, let me accommodate you. Are you okay? When someone comes up to you and you're like having your time, and they just want to accommodate you, they feel uncomfortable. So they have a need to come over and you just want to be alone. So this is a disbalanced emotional. It's caring, but it's insensitive. So for example, someone going at the morgue crying, right? And then, oh no, they're crying. Let me go over there and put my hand around their shoulder. It seems reasonable, but is that what's the highest and greatest good for them in that moment? That's up to you. That depends on how expanded and sensitive your mind is. You see, so there's no rule here. There's no yes or no. You know by having a clear mind, by having an expansive mind. So, the emotional, physical, intellectual means interest in intellectual matters, ones that stimulate the brain, ones that stimulate thinking. So, they should be balanced. That's what we mean by stage 2. Stage of purification leads to a balance between the physical, the mental, and the intellectual. Question. What qualifies one for impurity? What makes a person impure?
Being alive.
Huh?
Being alive.
Okay, that's jnanis are alive also, but they're not impure.
Thoughts.
So we have to discard being alive. Thoughts, very close.
Ignorance?
Ignorance, that's very general. Thoughts is very close.
Our desires.
Super. So what is desires? Last week we spoke of raga, dvesha, likes and dislikes. Now, raga, dvesha by themselves is not the problem. The problem is when raga and dvesha are exercised without stage 1, without discipline, without dharma, without ahimsa, without ethics, without empathy. Now you can see why stage 2 comes after stage 1. For example, Hitler had a like for Germany, dislike for any other country, and due to lack of stage 1, that is, discipline or a expanded mind to feel other nations' pain, due to the lack of that, stage 2 went overboard, right? The purification, the like and dislike went overboard. In other words, there's no limit because there's no guiding principle. There is no dharma that is guiding my likes and dislikes. Therefore, this ends up into a over-exercising of one's likes and dislikes. Constant sense gratification, constant sense pleasure seeking, constant very harsh dislike. If I don't like someone and there is a very harshness attitude towards that, that's lack of stage 1. That's the reason. So, bringing it back to the question, what makes the person impure? The answer is excessive likes and dislikes. Okay? Because they are the guiding principle for such a person. And they constantly take the person to situations and environments which get the person into trouble, which then one has to address those consequences later on. So, how do we exercise? This is a how question. The balance of raga dvesha. One way is to cut down on something that you depend on. Think about something that you depend on for joy, because this is your raga operating you. This is you're depending on raga for happiness. So cut down, at least start with 10% or 20%, at least for a day, and see if you can still be untouched. If you like to put onions in all of your foods and you cannot go without onions, then leave the onions out. If you need to have a conversation that's 2 hours long, if anything shorter, then one says, no, I don't feel connected with you, then call the conversation to about 10 or 20 minutes and then walk away. You know this often thing between people, and they have to hang around for like 5 hours, and especially the woman will say, oh, now I feel connected to you, because we've been talking for like 2 hours. What is this? This is her raga. That means her raga says, if my raga is not satisfied to the 120-minute mark, then I'm going to project a dislike onto this conversation called unconnectedness. Okay? So our raga dveshas are the troublemakers in our life. This is why they are the cause, the source of impurity. So the instruction is to manage raga dvesha, find something that you depend on for happiness and cut it down a couple of percent and see if you can still retain your composure so that you can discover that you can still be happy without that which used to make one happy. Okay? So stage 1, stage of discipline, living life of morals and virtues. Stage 2, living a life of purity. How? By managing one's raga dvesha. As a result, this paves way for stage 3, yatat manaha. Okay? Stage of self-inquiry. Which means self-inquiry is only possible, or proper self-inquiry that is, when stage 1 and 2 are sufficiently exercised. See, we all practice self-inquiry on worldly objects. Should I buy this car or that car? Should I live here or should I live there? Should I talk to them or should I not talk to them? This is not what we're speaking of, because the context here is self-knowledge, moksha. So obviously when I say self-inquiry, it would be self-inquiry about the subject I. Which means everything about your experience is self-inquiry. Okay? So this stage leads eventually to spiritual growth. This is the seed which causes spiritual growth. When the inquiry turns from worldly objects onto the person who is always present. That's what we call the beginning of the spiritual journey. So that means you can't call someone spiritual if they're very good inquiring, but they're inquiring about money or inquiring about how to make the best deal or to gain an upper hand in a sale. So that's not what we're speaking of. Okay. So this stage is efforts of self-inquiry in order to strengthen one's spiritual interest. Effort, that's the big word. If I don't apply effort into my inquiry, then the inquiry is going to remain only so attractive that it's going to become the following, which is I accommodate spirituality into my life. Familiar, doesn't it? Instead of I accommodate life into my spirituality. See the difference? It's a big difference. Because usually what we do is we say, spirituality is just something that I do haphazardly, once in a while, when I have some time, spare time, then I'm going to accommodate it into my life. That's not what we're speaking of. So in order to turn this around and say, I am accommodating life, people, circumstances, everything into my life of spirituality, that takes stage 3, self-inquiry. Is that clear, that difference? Okay, in Vedanta, according to Vedanta, there is no such thing as being blessed by God out of nowhere or for no reason, out of the blue. According to Vedanta, grace is earned. That means grace is only earned by your effort. That's why I said self-inquiry is effort. Which means if I don't apply effort, then we're going to go into that formula, and that is to accommodate spirituality into my life. And that's not how it works. Because if that is the case, then this is not going to work. Moksha is not something that is haphazard or something that I just accommodate once in a while. It's literally a 24/7 effort. One dreams about it, one thinks about it, one is obsessed about it, one is crazy about it, one has no life other than moksha. When I say moksha, I mean permanent knowledge without sporadically losing who the I is and then going, oh, I lost it, right? So moksha is permanent. So considering if something requires so much effort, and you should be glad that it does require so much effort, then why would one want to accommodate spirituality into one's life? Automatically, you just say, spirituality is my life. There's no other reason to live. There's no other reason to be.
Does that grace include grace from past lives as well?
It does, of course, because the punya karma from past life adds up, and then you end up into a methodology that helps you to move forward, right? So you got to think about why are you attracted to certain things. It's simply because the punya has come to a point where you're now, quote, blessed. But God didn't bless you. You blessed yourself through your efforts. That's the difference. That's why I say this stage is about self-effort.
So
Okay.
grace just another form of karma?
Grace is used to refer to karma that has been constantly applied in the light of stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. That means if I constantly inquire about money, how much money I should make, then I'm not going to say, oh, I've been graced. I'm not going to, quote, say I've been graced. Why? Because my discrimination has been towards the world and not towards the matters of spiritual growth. So yes, there is a past involvement into why you are where you are today. Okay? So that means God does not decide who's going to have permanent knowledge? Why not? Why doesn't God decide? And what's the problem? What's the logical fallacy if we say that God blesses you?
Because everyone already has it.
That's very good. The other part is, if we say that God blesses an individual with a lot of punya karma, then what are we saying? What?
Advaita.
Huh?
Advaita.
Advaita. We're saying that it's a God who is partial. I love you more than the other. You see, God is not an anthropomorphic creature who blesses, and by the virtue of its blessing, we then go, oh, I am so lucky. You're not lucky. You only say I'm lucky in reference to the past punya karma that has been accumulated to bring you to where you are today. It's the same thing in business. If a person strives step by step, little by little, they make a business, they grow the business, and then they say, I'm lucky. But in actuality, they're not lucky. They did it through constant self-inquiry, constant effort, constant attempt, right? Is this working out? How are my sales going? Who else can I joint venture with? That's just for business. Same thing for viveka, for discrimination of one's spiritual growth. It was chapter 9, 9, Krishna says, my grace is universally available to all. Okay? So Ishvara, God says, my grace is universally available to all. You just need to, what? Use it. So what do we mean by using it? What we mean is this. Suppose there are two people. Okay, they're both hungry. One person decides to take a seed and plant it in the ground. The sun is already given, the soil is already given, the rain is already given. And they wait and they make food. While the other person, despite also having the sun, the soil and the rain, that is to plant their own seeds, doesn't make use of that which is already available. Thus, the consequence is unlucky, but this one is lucky. But it's actually not lucky. It's by my own effort that I have applied and used what was already provided for me all along. That which is provided for me all along is what we call God's grace. That means you have to use that which is available to you. That means I have to use the knowledge to remove ignorance. If I don't use it, well, then one's going to pay the consequences of that also.
So we refer to grace, trying to understand the word grace here a bit better.
Yeah, okay, grace is said to attribute one who is blessed. So one who is blessed by what, right? By something that is good.
Yeah, we're talking in terms of spirituality here.
Yeah.
Grace, we're talking here about someone referring to a good person.
Good, that's true.
Or a sattvic person.
Yeah.
So we say he's graced.
No, we're going to say that person is graced by one's own use of free will. Once I use my choice, A or B, plant the seed or don't plant the seed.
Yeah.
When I plant the seed, I am blessed by the result. Therefore, I say God's grace. So I can only say God's grace if I apply my free will by using that which is provided for me already.
Yes, so the person has earned its own grace.
They have earned it.
And so I think it's all coming down to using one's intelligence.
Exactly. That means depending on how educated one is depends on the limitations of the amount of actions and the quality of actions one's able to apply. And that itself is also a result of their choices in the past. Because if I am presented with a seminar for exercising my power in money making, or presenting a seminar to exercise my power, my intelligence for self-knowledge, how to be happy, it's still up to me. But both are going to have consequences, right? So that means the choice that I have depends, and the choice that I use, which I have, depends on the kind of intelligence that I have, which depends on the kind of choices which I can apply, which depends on the kind of grace I can say I got.
But also there could be people, and I've heard of people that are in prisons for rape, murder, pedophilia that are now studying the scriptures and waking
Yeah,
up.
yeah, I heard that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, very much. I saw this on a documentary. It's very inspiring, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Because their lives have changed around. And they, one of them said, my life I'm not that person anymore. You know, I'm someone totally else, totally different.
So do you think that could be grace from past lives?
Yeah, you see, this is exactly the thing. You know, why are they suddenly? So that means, if you think about it, they had to perform this this act, this sinful act, as we would call it, apparently sinful, in order for them to capture the interest, or to be captured, or for their interest to be captured by the Shastra. That's why you can't ever judge, ever. And I know one guy also, I watched a documentary, it's like, wow, this guy's got a really nice demeanor, nice personality. And he took the host to his cell, and you can just see like books of Buddhism, Kabbalah, religious books. And this guy's like speaking like really wise. So
could it be self-inquiry during the prison term?
huh?
Could it be self-inquiry during the prison term?
Probably, yeah. So even that, see, I have the time, I have the cell to myself. I can either use it to talk sports, or I can use it to inquire about the I. That's what self-inquiry is, stage 2. Turning from outwards, the self-inquiry turns to inwards. And that alone, even in the jail, can work very well to bring one's interest up, which would then be a very useful tool in the next life.
Even Vyas, he was a dacoit.
Huh?
In his younger days, Vyas, it was Vyas, I think, he was a dacoit. He used to go and steal from people.
Yeah.
And so he went and he was a sage.
Yeah,
And
Vyasa.
Vyasa,
Yeah.
who's written all these books.
Yeah.
And he said that, so the sage said to him, ask your family whether they will be willing to take on the bad karma of your actions. And so he went back and asked his family, and they said, no way. He says,
And it struck him, that's really struck him.
And then he changed and became this great saint.
Just like that, with one little thought, one little circumstance. This is called your prarabdha karma.
Yeah.
So from that aspect, you can say it was fated to happen.
Yeah.
So planting the seed, does it depend on the prarabdha karma or your own will? You said free will initially. Is it the free will or the prarabdha karma?
Your free will gets exercised throughout the course of your prarabdha karma running.
So basically there is no free will.
There is a free will in terms of choice. That means if my prarabdha karma has got me into the cell, now in the cell I exercise my free will to think about myself, or to think about how I should resent or to retaliate. You understand? So prarabdha karma gets you into situations.
Okay.
The actions which you do throughout those situations, that is where your free will power is available. So that means you can't really stop your prarabdha karma because you don't control the field. God does. But you can decide how I wish to think about what happens to my life. So that thinking, that decision of thought, alone would then instigate another thought which would then lead to a different action. That means if somebody comes and swears at me, and then I resent that, and then that will lead into a thought of violence, and then if I go and punch, then that will lead into consequences. Right? So that means my prarabdha karma was to be sworn at, but in that choice I had a chance to go, okay, that's your opinion, I forgive you, and I just walk away. Or to go and, apply violence. This is what we mean by prarabdha karma is always running, but you always have a choice how to exercise what happens to you. Okay? So, this stage is putting the effort or applying effort into the right direction. I've got A, I've got B. Both require effort. So which direction should I go? That direction which would most likely be conducive according to stage 1, which is what? Ahimsa, dharma. That's what we call right effort in the right direction. If I apply action which hurts another or hurts me, that's called a wrong action. Okay? Or inappropriate. We don't use actually the word wrong, but inappropriate action. Is that clear?
So, what happens when a person who does self-inquiry in a situation like a prison from the acts and whatever they've done, and then released out because of their good behavior,
Yeah.
and then they reform that action again, they redo the action again.
That's
So
why
there
is
are
that?
many people like
Yeah,
that who
super.
does that. So
Yeah.
what happens?
Okay, why does that happen? Because in the jail, in the cell, the environment was conducive for retaining the like, suppressed. As soon as the like is contacted by the sense organs, the world triggers the person's likes and dislikes, and because they were not controlled truly in the cell, they go and express themselves.
It doesn't even have to be a cell either, it could be your room in the ashram.
Absolutely.
The tree in the forest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is why we have one personality in the house. As soon as you get out of the house, it's someone totally different. Why? Because the environment is constantly triggering these likes and dislikes. This is why stage of reducing raga dvesha, likes, dislikes, is so important. Otherwise, one becomes a slave helplessly to their likes and dislikes. Okay. Stage 4 is Rishayaha. All right. Rishayaha is stage of gaining knowledge. So this means this stage you can only be called a rishi once stage 1, 2, and 3 are complete. Now, what does rishi mean, by the way? Rishi comes from the Sanskrit word rish, and rish means to know. This means that you can be a rishi in your knitting class, right? It just means to know, nothing mystical. You can be a rishi in painting, right? Because you know how to paint. You can be a rishi as a CEO. That means you know the subject matter. So in the context of Vedanta, it's the one who knows who or what I am as a result of the prior stage of self-inquiry. That means a rishi can only come to the stage of a rishi once one has inquired into who I am and who I am not. That's why a rishi comes after self-inquiry. A rishi is, by the way, not someone who has a long beard, knotted hair, orange robe, has a certain age to them, looks wise, speaks in a very authoritative manner, people are coming up to them, and how many other circumstances do we have? Like really persuasive circumstances that we go, okay, that's definitely a rishi. That's the guru. Rishi has nothing to do with how one looks, how young or old one is, what kind of authority they have, how are others responding to them, has nothing to do with this, just to get that clear. In fact, the more prominent, the more exuberant, the more flamboyant, the more expressive, the more it's like, wow. The more that wow feeling comes, the more one should be ideally careful. Okay, not always, of course, there's always exceptions. Like Chinmaya was a fantastic rishi and had a lot of people. But then how do you really tell who's true, who's the real deal? Right? Don't fall for these looks. That's the whole point. What's the rishi going to care what kind of clothes are being worn, or how are they speaking to another person, or what kind of authority they're projecting? It's got nothing to do with it. So rishi just humbly means one who has self-knowledge. One whose mind is expanded enough from stage 1 not to be able to trick others into thinking I am higher and others are lower. You see how it's connected? If my mind is expanded, I accommodate your needs, accommodate your feelings. Thus, how does it make sense to now claim one as a true rishi and put oneself above? Wouldn't that automatically hurt other people? Right? Because we all feel lower and above. We need to feel it. But if I truly feel that, then how can I possibly claim myself to be a rishi? So claiming oneself to be a rishi while at the same time having this aura of I am above you, be careful, right? A rishi is just completely equal to an ordinary person. The more ordinary, the better. All right, so rishi means one who has knowledge in this context of who I am and who I am not. Tattva vivekaha atman satyam tadanyat sarvam mitya iti. In other words, one who knows that the Atman is satyam and everything else is mitya. Okay. This then leads to stage 5, Chinna Dvaita. Stage of gaining conviction. This is one of the most important stages. This stage involves freedom from doubts, clarifying all one's doubts in the matter of who I am and who I am not. In the matter of 3 points, actually. Clarifying doubts about what? Number 1, jiva. What is a jiva? A jiva is that one who mistakes themselves to be the body, mind, intellect complex. That means you cannot call a wise person a jiva. A wise person is called a jiva muktaha, but not a jiva. So jiva is only applicable to one who doesn't or hasn't assimilated the knowledge to the point of knowing without a shadow of a doubt that I am not this body, but I am something that is beyond the body. Okay, that's a jiva, number 1. Number 2, jagat. So removing doubts regarding jagat. Jagat means world. How do we define the world in the most accurate way possible by getting 10 out of 10? This is what you would have to answer if somebody asks you, what is the world? When I say the world, am I just talking about Earth?
No.
No. World is just matter, right? The world. The universe is the world. The world is time, space, and all objects within it. Can you get more accurate than that? What is there but time and space and objects in time and space? That's Jagat. So how does Jagat express itself? In a form of laws and orders. By whom or by what? By whom is not a valid statement. By what? Ishvara. So Ishvara expresses its power, Sarvam Shakti, all power, Sarvam Jnanam, all knowledge, in a form of what we call Jagat. And what we call Jagat is nothing but laws and orders operating, connecting, and working, producing what we have right now. For example, the law of order called sound is now traveling from this mouth, and the law of air is allowing the transference of sound waves to enter your eardrums, and the eardrums have hairs which are now vibrating, which you also did not create, but it was a order, a law created by the creator, which is then sending electrical impulses to the region of the brain, which is converting those sounds into symbols, which then addresses the chitta, that is your memory, and the chitta you certainly did not create either, the faculty to remember. So the sounds are being compared to the chitta, and then you're able to go, I understand the English language. And all this happens in microseconds without even noticing it. So these laws and orders are in operation wherever we look around us. The law and order of gravity, for example, I just observe the law and order. If I drop this, it's going to fall down. I am observing a law and order given by Ishvara. And this law and order, the totality of these laws and order, we call Jagat. So what is Jagat? Laws and orders, time and space, and all objects within it. So stage 5 is stage of conviction, right? That means being convinced. What is conviction? Totally being convinced that this is true. That's what conviction means, without any doubt. So, this means self-knowledge without conviction is as good as ignorance. What's the point of going, I'm Atman, but I'm also a little bit of Jiva? That's not truth. That's partial truth. You're either one or the other. There's no in between. So conviction, stage 5, is conviction so strong that there is no doubt of who I am. Okay? The knowledge is complete. We call this complete knowledge Nishchaya Jnanam. I'm going to use this word again, so take note of it. Nishchaya, Y-A, Jnanam. Nishchaya Jnanam. Knowledge of conviction. That means knowledge that is completely absent of doubts. What we're saying is in stage 5, this is the instruction now. Okay, so what's the instruction? How do we make this practical? Stage 5, convert self-knowledge into Nishchaya Jnanam. Okay, now you're going to say how, right? The answer to how is, this is the most important part of this stage, constantly raising and answering questions. About whom? About the subject I, about the experience that I'm constantly undergoing, about the relationship between Jiva, Jagat, and the last one I haven't mentioned is, remember that? Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. What do I mean by Ishvara? Remember I said Jiva, Jagat? That means removing all doubts about the Jiva, who I am as a person, what is the world, that is what is God, and Ishvara, that is Brahman.
So as you said before, we're practicing all stages as we go on. And
All
you can
stages,
say
yeah.
gaining conviction is heavily assisted by stage 3.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's actually interlinked.
Yeah.
Except stage 3 is more preliminary. It's still kind of getting into it. It's planting the seeds. But stage 5, you're already into it. You're already obsessed into spirituality, right? So stage 5, we are constantly raising and inquiring about the nature of the I. So, for example, what does it mean to say conviction of knowledge? Think about I'm going to bring some examples. We say, I am immortal, right? This is a statement of truth, of fact. I am immortal. I'm speaking as the personal I. Okay, so when I say I, I'm talking about you. Do you absolutely believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that when you say I am immortal, do you absolutely believe that? Without any hesitation. Don't nod or anything. This is your private inquiry. Are you totally certain that you are indeed immortal? Okay? If not, raise questions and answer them. If you cannot answer them, then ask the teacher until you come to the resolution and remove all doubts preventing me from knowing that or from accepting that I'm indeed immortal.
What I struggle with, and I don't know where I'm at in my life stage at this time, it's easy to understand this philosophy.
Yeah.
But how am I actually living it? That is my question.
Okay, the question is, are you raising and answering questions constantly all day long? If not, you're not living it. If you are, you're living it. Period.
Moment by moment.
Moment by moment. This is about becoming an inquirer. Your identity is to be an inquirer all day long. About everything. Just a curious, like a child. How, why, when, who, which. So, the answer to that question is, are you constantly and naturally asking questions in regards to this person, Jiva, 2, Jagat, the world, and 3, Ishvara? If you are, you're living it, you got nothing to worry about. Naturally, little by little, this knowledge will be firmer and firmer and firmer. If you are not, then the answer is you're not living it. Okay? Is there any doubts about this?
Yeah. because in this world, I have to think about a lot of things.
Yeah.
I still live, so I have to do all the mechanical things to sustain my living. So I can't constantly think about, and keep inquiring on every single action. I don't, my mind doesn't have that space at this time to constantly think about it because I'm engrossed in other tasks.
Okay, so your job is to find a way to think about it. See, nobody can do this for you. See, what more can somebody say than this is effort? If effort is lacking, that's your problem. Because nobody can force you to apply effort, right? So, once again, if one says, I have things to attend, I have things to do, I have family to take care of, that is not an excuse. Because even looking at your family, your business, the circumstances which you deal with, you can see what? Orders operating in the very things you deal with every day. Orders like what? Body, mind, intellect. Who is this person that is interacting with this one? Is it the mind that's operating right now? Is it the intellect that's operating right now? What is the likes and dislikes operating? What kind of likes and dislikes? What is this? Is this answer? Is this his or her likes and dislikes? See, so you're using Vedanta knowledge to formulate questions about your experience that you undergo every day. Okay, this is your job. I cannot stress this enough. I can only tell you what to do. Whether you do it or not, that's up to you. Yeah? So the speed of how quickly this works depends on how crazy and obsessed you are about making this work. Yeah?
I think,
Go on.
so just one question. I find that the mind moves very quickly to Vedanta when one's faced with an issue.
Yeah.
And then you quickly turn and then inquire, what am I faced with? What am I thinking? What is happening here and how do I deal with it?
Fantastic. So what about the other remaining times?
Other remaining things just work mechanically. You get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you shower, you do this, you do that.
But when you're brushing your teeth, you're not thinking about the brush going up and the brush going down.
No.
The brush going, that's good time to reflect.
So, well, I'm just trying to train my mind.
Yeah.
And working out where I'm actually at in living this life, and creating that transformation. So it's easy to, you can go and read this philosophy and learn it by heart, but to actually live that life is the effort.
That's the effort. No, really, you've got to build that strong energy.
How many of us in this room, when you're brushing our teeth, thinking up, down, okay, this is up. Like how many? I definitely have not. You just want to make sure your teeth is clean.
Yeah, I personally don't think about these things. Like I'm exactly like you. Throughout the day, I don't think about, oh look, I'm not picking. Who's picking up the pen? Who's the experiencer of this talking, right? No. So how do you deal with this, right?
Yes.
Make Shastra your priority in life.
Yeah, that is there.
Okay, then double the effort.
We have to make more effort.
Yeah, double the effort. No, literally double the effort. Until you're just, it's like the first word that comes out of it is just Vedanta, right? That kind of mind, it's totally filled with Vedanta, that is thinking all day in every opportunity about it. So that means condition your mind to think about this as much as possible, because the exposure, repetitive exposure to the same knowledge leads to the thought which represents that exposure. So be exposed to this as often as possible. Okay? Have a symbol, a deity, Ishta Devata, something that as soon as you see it instantly projects, like you see it reminds you of reverence.
Oh, yes.
Right? Hold this in your mind constantly all day long. Maybe you have like a paper or...
Well, I've got these little Radha Krishna in my kitchen, so we go every morning. And my husband, he lights the lamp there.
Or maybe on your phone, like you can have a wallpaper back on your phone also, a picture of your deity. Okay, so really just exposing yourself, surrounding yourself with this world, right?
Yeah, but everything you do is spiritual, isn't it? Even when you're cutting the vegetables, you can be thinking like, oh my God, this is like a miracle, you know, I will eat this food, it's sustaining me, you know, and that sort of thing. That's I'm always constantly amazed and always asking questions.
Well, that comes back to the idea of the yoga of any action, because when you perform the action, you're doing it with the attention and your consciousness, which is melding your spiritual being with your physical universe together. That's the yoga of the action.
Okay, let's move on. We've got a few more things to do. Okay. Another example is, do I really believe that the Lord I'm worshiping is non-different from me? Am I totally, is it a living reality that the one that you're worshiping is completely non-separate from you? If the answer is no, then raise questions and bring up answers until it makes sense, until you are convinced that the worshipped is exactly the same as the worshipper. For example, if I'm standing in front of a Shiva temple, then I'll say, what inheres both this deity and this worshipper, Brahman? So that means there is no difference between this and me. So this is the kind of inquiry we're talking about, using knowledge gained in class to inquire in the real world. Okay, the other is to ask, do I honestly believe, know without a shadow of a doubt, that the truth of me, the reality of me, is more real than the reality of the world? Do I honestly believe that the reality of who I am, Brahman, is more real than this dream that I witness every day? If the answer is no, raise questions and bring up answers until you remove the doubt that is causing a distance between total acceptance of this fact. Okay? The point is you're raising questions and bringing up answers. All right. So summary of this stage is removal of doubt. Mananam. You heard before of mananam. Mananam is removal of doubt. Stage 6. Final stage, Brahma Nirvanam. Final stage is merger in Brahman as Brahman. Merger in Brahman as Brahman. See, I put the word as Brahman. I didn't. If I left that out, then that would imply what?
Because then separate.
If Brahman was a globe, and I said merger with Brahman, what does that mean? At the point of ignorance, there was an entity who was outside of Brahman, which means what? Now Brahman becomes subject to time and space. That's why I said merger with Brahman as Brahman. Okay, so this stage is oneness with Brahman. That is, my nature is oneness with Brahman. And one has, quote, I'll put it in quote, attained merger with Brahman. Attained merger with Brahman as Brahman. I'll explain what this means now. So attain does not mean merging physically, by the way. That's pretty obvious. What we mean when we say merge is removing the misconceptions or the false notion born out of ignorance that there is a distance between me and Brahman. That's what merger means. Removing the removal of the misconception or the false notion born out of beginningless beginning ignorance, which is causing or has caused me to believe that I am somehow apart or away from Brahman. This is exactly why the spiritual world, parts of it, are into trying to experience Brahman, trying to experience the reality of the total, is trying to experience God. Why? Because this fundamental error that the person, despite their ignorance of the total, is not separate from the total. You understand? Even when the person believes they are apart from the total, the truth is they are not apart from the total. Just like when the wave, who is ignorant, believes it is apart from the ocean, whether it believes that or not, the fact is it is not apart from the ocean. So that's why we say this stage is the recognition that my nature is not separate from the whole, from the total. All right? So merger means dropping ignorance caused by the notion of distance. You're dropping that idea that there is a distance between me and you, between me and the total. All right, now we're going to talk about 4 stages. We're going to put this into a practical application. So that summarizes 25. All right, so you got 6 stages now, and you can see which stage one's in, and inquire which stage should I work more on. And this is a beautiful order as to what happens from the beginning all the way to when one can say merger with Brahman. In other words, removing the false notion that there was a distance between me and the total. All right? So the definition of this verse 25 is sages whose impurities have been destroyed, whose doubts have been resolved, who have self-mastery and who are happily engaged in the good of all beings, that's obviously stage 1, in the good of all beings, gain liberation. All right, so we just explain that in detail what this means. All right, verse 26. Kama krodha viyuktanam yatinam yatachetasam abhito brahma nirvanam vartate viditatmanam. All right. This verse is the same idea as the previous, except it summarizes the previous 6 verses into 4 stages, which are both stages and practical application. So these are the 4 great sadhanas. The first one is Kama Krodha Viyuktanam. You probably heard Kama Krodha before. So, okay, this stage is desire and anger management. Oh yeah. This pretty much sums up 99.999% of all therapies in the world. Under too much desire or too much anger. Of course, anger expresses as jealousy, possessiveness, greed, sorrow, anger. You just keep on going with this list, right? Guilt especially, yeah. So this is all just the source of anger. So obviously, this is a big one. Desire and anger management. Okay, kama is desire for acquisition.
So this is 2.1?
This is now I'm describing what kama is before I describe what number 1 is. So just put kama is desire for acquisition, and krodha is anger caused by 2 principles. 1, the obstacle towards the attainment of my desire. So anger is caused when somebody obstructs the path towards my desire. What do I mean by that? Before we put number 2, we're on number 1 now, right? So how is anger caused? Number 1, an obstacle obstructing what? Kama. All right? Example. Did you ever get stuck in a traffic jam? You need to get from here to there, but you couldn't move. So there were cars obstructing my path. And how did the person feel? Were they cheerful? Exactly. All right, so the cars were the obstruction to my desire to be over there. How about your desire, your kama, your desire is peace and quiet in your own house. But then the next door neighbor has big beats, right? So these big beats are obstructing my peace in a form of sound waves. How do you feel towards a neighbor? Oh, such a lovely guy, I love him. Huh? No, there's anger, right? There's anger. It's genuine. Why? Because the sound waves obviously originating from the source, and then the anger gets projected onto the source. Understandable. How about this one? In Nigeria, there's a river called Niger Delta. Niger Delta is a highly rich river in oil, like the best oil you'll find. what happened in a few years, especially, it stopped now since the police have raided, the army have raided the illegal refineries, oil refineries. What used to happen is there were thousands of illegal refineries. Why? So what do they do? They siphon off oil from BP, Shell, and Caltex, right? The major companies who are in the company. So they basically stick their own pipelines into the main pipelines and they siphon off oil. And what happens is then they process the oil, they get diesel, they get petrol, and they get gas out of that oil, right? So these three come out of the oil. Now, this was going on for years and years. And the environmental impact of this, if you see the documentary, it's unbelievable. The whole Niger Delta River is just black, right? Because the thousands of illegal refineries, the way they process this oil, all of this muck, all of this goo goes into the river. All the fisheries are dead, and the plants around are just dead, right? And you times this by thousands of times every day, right, on a massive scale. The environmental impact is just beyond conception. Now, why are they doing this? The reporters asked them, right, because they actually infiltrated and they interviewed them. Like, why are you doing this? What's the answer? There's no other option. I want to survive. It's always the same. Whatever something is illegal being done, the answer is always the same. I have no other option. What else can I do? I need to survive. So, their karma is what? Money for survival. You agree? Now, what happens if you actually go in there and you're the Mr. Guri Guri, the Vedanta, and you say, you know what? You're destroying the environment. This is incurring a lot of papa karma. You're going to have to pay for the consequences. The fisheries are dead. The individuals who are depending on fish can't eat. This is just burying you deeper down the rabbit hole. You're going to have a hard time getting out of this. This is not good. This is himsa. This is injury. Be a good person. Here's the Bible. You're going to get shot, basically. So that means even if the person comes with honest intentions, with dharmic intentions to save this person from burying their own hole deeper and deeper, even that would make me what? An obstruction to their desire. And because of that, they get angry, and when there's anger, there's what? High emotion, low intellect, and even less, they're capable of discerning what does it mean to be a human being, therefore it's easier to kill me. That means my attempt was actually counterintuitive. My attempt to save them actually caused them to be even more angry because I was an obstruction to their desire, and they shot me, and now they just simply continue doing what they were always doing. It's very hard to stop a person whose desire is supported without stage one, without dharma, without principles, without the ethics. Right? So it makes you wonder, how could you stop Hitler? Is it just a matter of saying, no, don't do this? People are innocent. It's not going to work. Sometimes you need force. This is why the battle happened at Kurukshetra. There was no other choice. Duryodhana was totally not willing to cooperate, even with Krishna's attempts to negotiate and offer the kingdom to Pandavas and the Kauravas. Duryodhana wasn't buying any of it. So the last option, as Krishna always says, is war. That's why the war happened, because it was the last option. All right. So the second way, so that was number one. The second way how anger happens is by the loss of objects. Loss of desired objects. When somebody leaves you, who you depend on, right? Who you like, are you super happy? No, it's okay. We're all just one here. It's this is all temporary. No, an object which I desired, I now lost, and what does that cause? Anger. So the individual gets very angry. All right. So these two cause krodha.
So even the Gnani would feel those emotions if they lost somewhere?
No, because the Jnani has gone through stages 1 to 5 sufficiently to get rid of their likes and dislikes. So that's going to lead me to the next point. Very good you brought that up. Question. What causes anger? What's the source of anger? So anger is krodha. What's the cause of anger? Kama. So that means what's kama? Likes and dislikes. If I've taken care of my likes and dislikes in stage 1 and 2, then what is the chance of anger coming in the first place, since I'm not desiring anything? You see? So how do you remove anger about anything? By managing or minimizing the strength of your likes and dislikes. We're not interested in anger management, we are interested in desire management, in minimization of gratuitous desires which have no bearing or any kind of real value. And how do you do that? By inquiring what is the nature of this object. This is how you get out of the temptation. You stop and inquire, what is the truth of this object? Do I really need it? You know, how is it really going to work out? Is it really going to last? You know, what's the possibility of my interest sustaining itself for the next 5 years? You know, do I really need to apply all this effort? Right? So you inquire into the nature. As long as I don't inquire into the nature of objects, I'm going to be automatically persuaded to connect with this object. Why? Because it holds mysterious ideas into me. Why does it hold mystery? Because I haven't taken the time to inquire into it. For example, did you ever meet somebody or you saw somebody and you were intrigued by them? Like, wow, they're someone special. As soon as you talk to them and you really discover, you get to know them, right? What happens? Your desire drops. It minimizes. It comes back to a normal level. So the answer is how to manage kama and krodha. The question is how to manage kama by inquiring into the origin, into the nature of the object which holds my fancy. Okay? By inquiring into the nature of the object, automatically desire drops, and because it's dropped, there's no space for desire in the future, and because there's no space for desire in the future, the intellect is constantly remaining what? High and alert. As soon as there's desire, there's danger of krodha, anger. As soon as there's anger, even in a subtle form, jealousy or possessiveness, intellect drops. This is the danger of having desire for too many objects. All right. The second way to manage kama and krodha is the very important way. Stop depending on what you have for your happiness, but focus on what you are. Stop depending for this and that. Oh, I'm so happy because my wife and husband are alive, because my children are healthy and they're going to school and everything's going very well. Stop depending on that. Change your focus from things which you depend on for happiness to your nature of the self. What do I mean by this? Change your focus onto that one who exists. Who exists right now? I do. You do. Do you exist? Put your focus back onto your existence alone. What more could you want than just to exist? If a person doesn't exist, what is there to say? What is there to know if you don't exist? Your existence comes first, and everything else depends on your existence to get a chance to be called, oh, it's so lovely. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, I don't like it. Oh, I like it. You understand? So your existence comes first. That means turn your attention back on what you are. Sat Chit Ananda. Existence, awareness, limitless.
Just quickly, Andre, sorry, is this number 2 as in number 2 great sadhana, or as in number 2 in category 1?
This is the second way in category how to manage our kama, krodha.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, so the second way is to focus on what you are. Because why? Why else? Because you're always present, are you not? But is the object which you depend on always going to be present? No way. And even if it's present, it's going to change its status, its condition. So therefore, technically, even though it's present, it's not present because it's changed its condition. So always put the focus back onto what you are and stop putting focus constantly on what I have for my happiness. Because what I have is nothing but a dream, basically. It's just a dream. Changing objects, mithya.
Andre, can you just give the definition of Sat, Chit and Ananda?
Sat is existence, Chit is awareness, and Ananda is limitless.
Is limitless.
Limitless. That means your nature is, that means you are existence, which is what? Awareness. That's what you are. You exist and you're aware. You're aware why? Because you exist. And how come you exist? Because you know that, because you're aware of your existence. So they're inseparable. And this existence awareness, your true nature, Satchidananda Swarupaha, is limitless Ananda. All right, and the third way is dispassion. How to manage kama krodha. Third way, dispassion. Important word, vairagyam. You're going to hear this again. Vairagyam, dispassion. Okay, how does dispassion okay, what is dispassion? Dispassion is a neutral, a value-neutral relationship with objects. What is passion? Overinflated value imposed onto the object of my liking. See the difference? This passion is value neutral. I see it as it is. Passion is I see a woman and because my likes like this kind of body, this kind of person, then I project extra value onto this value neutral object. Therefore, this person becomes super important, worthy of my pursuit. So this passion is seeing things as they are without putting or projecting or wallpapering or dumping my likes and dislikes onto the worldly objects. All right? So now question is, how do you build this passion? This is the question. This is the instruction. How? Viveka. What is viveka?
Discrimination.
Good. Discernment, discrimination, distinction. Into the nature of the object. That means you are applying viveka into the nature of my object of fancy. If I like a lot of money, then inquire into what is money really? What is at the end of the day? Has it really made people happy? You know, how many times have someone like me already gone through this process of wanting money? Have they actually gone through, have they actually gotten anything in day? So inquire constantly into the object of your fancy is what produces what? Dispassion, and dispassion what manages your kama krodha, and kama krodha what? Allows the intellect to be available for the ultimate viveka being Tattva Vivekaha. What is the distinction of reality? Atma Satyam Mithya Sarvam. That means the truth between you and the world. That's the ultimate discrimination, the ultimate viveka. For that, you need to manage your desires, your raga dvesha. How? By the steps we're giving you. Okay? So the whole point of this is to make the mind available to constantly have clarity. Who am I here and who is not I? Atma, anatma. Who am I? The awareness. What is everything? Everything else other than awareness is anatma. Simple. Are you aware of this object? Therefore, this object is anatma. Are you aware of your hand? Therefore, your hand is anatma. Are you aware of your brain thinking now about this conversation? Therefore, your brain thinking now about this conversation is anatma. Are you aware about your awareness right now? Therefore, your awareness about awareness is anatma. All right? Stage 2. Yatta chetasam. This was all stage 1 actually. All right, kama krodha viyuktanam. Stage 2, yatta chetasam, is, all right, having an integrated and organized personality. Integrated, organized mind. Okay, stage 2, integrated, organized mind. I cannot stress the importance of being organized. If a person is disorganized in life, that is a direct mirror reflection of their thoughts. Okay? So the fastest way to organize your thoughts is by replicating a correlative action in real life, being start to get organized. Start to put your shoes in the same way, in the same direction, instead of throwing them all around. Put your spices in shelves. Okay? Put your vacuum cleaner in the section of where the appliances belong. Put your hammer, in the screwdriver into the section of one shelf. Okay, because this is going to train the mind to what? Constantly look where things belong. How am I supposed to apply viveka, distinction, discrimination, if my minds are all over the place? How am I able to capture distinctions, this differentiation, if my mind is everywhere? So start to develop an organized personality. Look at your computer. Do you have folders, or are your files just all over your desktop without any categories? Okay, so there's so many ways you can start to categorize your life. Why? What's it in it for you? Because the direct correlation of how much you're organized in life directly applies how fast you're able to gain this knowledge, right? Because this knowledge needs an impeccable, a high amount of organization. Now, I know what you're thinking. Are you talking about being in your head? Compartmentalization? No. There's a difference between intelligent spontaneity and unintelligent spontaneity. The difference is unintelligent spontaneity is being spontaneous because I'm free. Just being, who cares? Why do I need to put things away? Right? That requires no intellect, does it? No intellect. What is intelligent spontaneity? Intelligent spontaneity is being spontaneous in your organized world. Therefore, you're able to find things quickly. You're able to, You're able to get to the target instantly without wasting time. All right? Intelligence. So we're not talking about being a in the head, right, left-brained, compartmentalized individual. We're talking about being spontaneous and intelligent simultaneously. That's stage 2. I'll give you a metaphor now that's going to color the scene in a beautiful way. What it means to be organized. Okay. Listen to the metaphor. I know we're going over time. This is super important, and we need to cover chapter 5. All right. Your mind, your body. This is a metaphor now. Your body is the car, the vehicle. The car gets you from place A to B. The sense organs, that is that which contacts the world, is what? The tires. The mind is the steering wheel. Now already you know where this is going. Yeah. Whoever is behind the steering wheel depends how the steering wheel gets turned, how the car drives aggressively, gently, slowly, fast, and how the sense organs, or to what circumstances the sense organs get exposed to. To the gravel, to a nightclub, to the shastra, to friends. So that means the driver is the intellect. That means the quality of the intellect depends how, or the quality of that you're able to drive your car. The education of the driver depends how many ways in the town they're able to cut and get to their destination. The less I know my town, the less educated I am, the harder it is to get to where I need to be, the more I get frustrated, the less intellect comes down, the more anger goes up. Okay? So what are we saying is, if one of these is inflicted, if one of these is flawed, just the steering wheel itself collapses the whole system. Just one sense organ, one tire. Suppose the person is promiscuous and they like to enjoy themselves. That is as good as overexposing one tire to the same surface. What happens? The tire gets worn out, deflated, and now the whole car doesn't ride anymore, and therefore it agitates now all three, the intellect, the mind, and the sense organs and the whole car. Therefore, the instruction is keep the body, the mind, the intellect, and the sense organs consistently healthy, disallowing any kind of exposure to what would otherwise injure them and cause a chain reaction of negative consequences down the road, right, literally. Okay? So, keep them all healthy. Not just the mind, not just the intellect, not just the body, not just the sense organs, all four. Because one affects the other, whichever way you look at it, they're all intertwined. Okay? Stage 3. Yatinam, making spirituality your priority in life. Stage 3, Yatinam, making spirituality a priority. As I said from the beginning, instead of making spirituality accommodate my precious life, whose life is that? Ahamkara's life, basically. A life of likes and dislikes. Instead of making spirituality accommodate my life, I make life, people, circumstances, everything accommodate my spirituality. Is this making me grow, or is this regressing my path? Is this causing progression, or is this instigating regression? Always move towards actions, thoughts which cause progression, and avoid at all costs thoughts which avoid regression. Now, Yatinam, stage 3. Stage 3, Yatinam. Okay? Spirituality priority. Now, I'm going to bring this to a real, down-to-earth basis. What does it mean to make priority spirituality without disconnecting from the world? It means to attend your worldly duties with your children, with work, with your friends, with family, with whomever it is that you love, that you have in your life, that is important. Not at any moment is Vedanta going to say move away from that, because there's no rational reason to do so. Fulfill your duties with all of them, but never lose sight why you are born. Moksha. Never lose sight of spirituality. Always make spirituality number one in everything while attending worldly duties. Okay? Stage 4. Last stage and we're done. Stage 4 is Jnana Yoga. Getting immersed in Jnana Yoga. It's not here, but... Okay? Getting immersed in self-knowledge. Obsessed. Okay, what is Jnana Yoga? We keep saying Jnana Yoga, Jnana Yoga. What is Jnana Yoga? Important definition. Systematic and consistent study of Vedanta. Systematic and consistent study of Vedanta for a length of time under the guidance of a competent teacher. Competent acharya. Just put teacher. So this means if it's not what is systematic? A, B, C, D, E. We're not talking about random satsangs. Today we're going to talk about love. Next week we're going to talk about fear. Next week we're going to talk about Atman. Next week we're going to talk about desire. No. A, B. That's why I'm going verse by verse. I'm not skipping. I'm going verse by. This is called systematic. Therefore, your job is whatever book you're involved in, whatever event you're going to, there needs to be a systematic approach, a continuity, a thread that one connects from the previous and the next one connects from the previous, instead of going all over the place. All over the place does not work, I promise you that. I know people in spirituality for 20 plus years who are so sharp in Buddhism, Jainism, Kabbalah, a little bit of Neo-Advaita. They know everything, but still, I'm still looking who I am. I don't know who I am. Why? Because they're everywhere. have a consistent, systematic approach. All right? So if you're not consistent and systematic, that is not Jnana Yoga. That's going to cause to failure of ascertaining this knowledge into real life embodiment, to embodying this knowledge, to actualizing this knowledge. Okay, I'm almost done. All right, so these people who have what? Ascertained this knowledge, Brahma Nirvanam. Brahma Nirvanam. So these people who have now ascertained are called Jnanis, and they have Brahma Nirvanam. And what do we say about Brahma Nirvanam? Oneness with Brahman. Merger with Brahman, meaning what? The false idea, the misconception that there is a distance between me and the total is removed. That's what merger with Brahman means, all right? And this merger is abhito, abhitaha. Abhitaha means it is a merger while the person is living, that is jivan muktaha, and after the person's body dies, that's called videha muktaha. Okay? So there is no difference for a realized person whether there is a body or whether the body is dead. That's why this merger is the same. All right. Final, chapter 5 ending. The Shastras use a fantastic example, what it means to say merger. Okay? So look at this pot. This pot is a jnani, a wise person. The space in the spot, you see the space? You can't see the space but there is space, right? Because if I put water, the pot's going to hold it. So there is space. So there is space in the pot. And there is what? Also space outside the pot. So suppose this pot is alive, okay? And we call this pot a Jivan Muktaha. What the Jivan Muktaha knows is that the space in the pot, the consciousness that I inhere, is exactly the same space of the total. Understand? This is what Jnanam causes one to understand and accept. This is not a matter of trying to experience. Why not? Because the space of the total is exactly the same space that is already inhered by the individual. Therefore, there is no possibility of trying to experience that which is already inhering in me right now. Okay? So we're saying that this pot space can never cause the space to displace, it can never divide the space, or can never be divided from the total space. It looks like it, right? Why? Because there's edges of what? The body. But in actuality, the space in the pot is no different than the space of the total. Okay? So, while the pot is okay, that is, it's alive, the space is one and the same as the total space. When this pot breaks, if I were to break this pot, that same space still remains to be the same space of the total. This is what it means when a wise person dies. Nothing really happened. Nothing happened. Why? Because the identification was with that which is inhering in the entire existence, Sat Chitananda. So now let's convert this into a statement. This is an unverbalized understanding of a jnani. I am one indivisible consciousness. I am one indivisible consciousness while this body is here, and I am one indivisible consciousness when this body is no longer here. What really changed? One indivisible consciousness is here right now in you, listening to these words. It's right now. You're not separate from this total. And when the body dies, that one indivisible consciousness who you are right now, your awareness that is, still continues. Nothing ever happened. The body came and went, but you continue to exist. This is the benefit of Jnana Yoga. Once assimilated and accepted, it is just a matter of going, indeed, the consciousness which I inhere is no different than the one indivisible consciousness that inheres in everyone. It's a matter of being actually sold into the idea that this is the fact, because it is the fact. I use this example in this show. I'm trying to sell you this book, and you're saying no, 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 no. And I keep selling this book. I keep using persuasive tactics. Keep using Vedanta. And you keep no, 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 no. And one day, I say something and you say, all right, I'm convinced. I'm going to buy the book, right? That's how a sale happens. What happened in that moment? Instantly, the doubter died. Instantly, that one who was there, refusing to accept that the space in here is the same as the space on the outside, that doubter in 1 second died. And now, suddenly, I have fully ascertained and accepted that indeed, that consciousness in me always is the same as the consciousness of the total. So that means I've been sold on the idea of truth, which stands true at all times, in the present, in the past, in the present, and the future. So what Vedanta is really just to convince, persuade the mind, the skeptical mind, as a result of endless generations of ignorance, that indeed its nature is not separate from the nature of the total. Om Tat Sat Iti Srimad Bhagavadgita Upanishads Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Sannyasa Karma Yoga Nama Panchamodhyaya. Brahman is the only reality. Thus ends the 5th chapter called Sannyasa Karma Yoga, having the topic of renunciation in the Bhagavad Gita, which is in the form of a dialogue between Shri Krishna and Arjuna, which is the essence of the Upanishads, whose subject matter is both the knowledge of Brahman and the process by which one applies in order to gain that knowledge, that my nature and the nature of the total is one and the same, whether this body is alive or not. Okay? So this concludes chapter 5, and next week we go straight into chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, meditation.